to this event. And so I think, what have I got? Nearly an hour?
Yeah, you've got basically an hour.
So this is going to be a bit of story about Flexforum, what it is, what we think flexibility is, why, and then a diversion into some uses of it and the questions that still need to be answered and that we're looking at. I'm hoping to leave a good chunk of time for you to answer those questions for me. I just do that? That work? Right. So, yeah, I'm the chief doer, only person. So Flexforum, the origin story, it evolved out of a couple of people going, more needs to be done in this space. This is 2021. I think there was some ranting at the downstream agenda at the time, which was the electricity sector patting itself on the back for job well done. There was no mention of customers, consumers, humans. And at the time, we were still talking about demand response, which we don't talk about anymore, but I'll get to that in a minute. From there, they said more needs to be done. That grew into a collection of about 15 organisations. The start of 2020, end of 2021 and 2022, and it went from there. There's now 47 members from across the electricity ecosystem. And because we had to get a bank account, the group had to incorporate, so I had to get a constitution, which required an objective. And these members are all committed to supporting practical action to maximise the value and benefits for households, businesses and communities of flexible distributed resources. So some couple of points to pull out of that. Households, businesses, communities, maximise the value and benefits of their resources for them and for the system and for the economy. So that drives everything that the group does and how it thinks about that. So its anchor point is humans, not the power system, not engineering choices. It's the people that use the system. So that's right, I'll get there. So it's quite a unique entity for New Zealand and Australia, at least, in the diversity of its membership. More than 50% of the members are not the traditional sector. There's actual individuals who are consumers, as they're termed in the Constitution. So they're just people who are keen to contribute to the conversation and do sometimes. So it's a very open sort of a group, but there's also these businesses. So I think, let me read this out. So 7 networks, including Transpower. There's what I've called 6 advisory businesses, so engineering sort of consulting firms that help people develop flexible sites, a couple of sort of consulting firms in that sort of space. 7, what I've termed flexible coordination suppliers. They're offering software, hardware solutions to people to maximise the value of their resources. So I think an example on there is Flexable. I think they're on there somewhere. Some hardware suppliers. So a couple of EV charging manufacturers, Basis and so forth. There's 4 universities, 3 from New Zealand, 1 from Australia. So the Australian National University, their Centre for Energy Studies are a really valuable contributor because of how far along they are and the work they're doing. So it makes us a little bit international. What else have I missed? Yeah, of course, and I think there's 3 retailers I think I've mentioned in there. So these people, look, you turn up and share your perspective and experience on a particular topic. I missed 3 connectivity providers, so they're a key part of the future ecosystem. So this diversity reflects the nature of the opportunity, but also of the challenge. This is herding cats. That's what I do. There's a bunch of people with very different interests, commercial interests, and sometimes positions on the topic. Yet they're brought together by like that shared view that flexible resources are needed for a future power system. And the tension between the different positions is not, it's difficult, can be difficult to manage, but it's also really valuable in that it highlights the things that you need to solve and work on, undertake research into, do some learning by doing, dig into why people are saying that. And so I think that structured conversations and learning has hopefully moved things on a lot further than they would have been if you'd been applying traditional regulatory processes, which are like sticking pins in your eyes, if they are asking the right question, which often they're not. Right, I think. So that's there. Okay, the touchstone for the group is the flexibility plan. When the group first came together, well, what are we going to do? That was sort of blank sheet of paper. What are we going to do? And they said, well, we've got a big job. The first thing you do is you put together a list of the things that you need to do. So that was turned into Flexibility Plan version 1, published in August 2022. We're now on to version 2 because it's you learn and learn what you're doing, understand things, and iterate. So it's anchored around, there's 41 steps or actions in there, each anchored to a choice or an action of a human as they go through their flexibility journey, as they discover their options, assess what their solutions might be, enable them and operate them. So instead of looking at it from I'm a network, this is what the human needs to do, or this is what I need to do, those actions of the network operator or a retailer or something is directly linked to what the human will be doing. Sadly, that's very unique. The sector doesn't think like that. They all come from their perspective, and it's very, very hard for people to look outside, like to step back and look at it from a different point of view, the human, the consumer, whatever. But it makes the whole exercise so much easier. It provides a coherent, structured way of looking at all of the issues. It doesn't work. You wouldn't be able to prepare a list, a whole of system list of actions, if you looked at it from the point of view of network operators, retailers, and so forth. It would just be disjointed and, well, we've already seen that. You wouldn't get much done. The other benefit of having a list of things is you can monitor progress. So checklist, has anything been checked off? So we did a first progress report last year, second one this year. Pass mark this year. Again, the traditional parts of the sector thought more progress was being made than the, say, non-traditional parts of the sector. Unfortunately, yeah, so that was a move faster was the view of people who are not the traditional parts of the sector and trying to get in. But there was progress from last year. So there's more learning by doing happening, more sort of practical, how do we do this activities going on, focused at not just technology, but how you practically use it, the commercials of the activity. And there's been a bit more progress on providing humans with the information they need or data that they need to make choices, a little bit more progress. The group is very clear in its view that the number one thing that needs to be sorted is the holes in the value stack need to get filled. I'll touch on that in a bit later, because money needs to be on the table to develop products and propositions that encourage people to motivate people to use flexibility for their own benefit and otherwise. Okay, what is flexibility? According to the Flexforum, we don't talk about demand flexibility, we don't talk about demand response, we don't talk about demand management, or we try not to at least. It's all encompassing. It's the result of households, businesses, communities, and this includes power stations and networks and so forth, modifying their use of power or production of power, either by generation or discharging a battery, in response to an external price or physical signal. That's what it is. It's like not really special, but the sector's done that for a long time. But what they haven't done is thought about it from the point of view of the human. Because the flexible resources are not just power stations or synchronous condensers and so forth. They include any form of consumption or usage. So EV charging, using your space or space heating, machines, distributed generation, most commonly solar on your roof. Yes, that is flexible because you can choose to use more of your own source generation than grid generation. That is a human flexing because they're making a choice to modify their usage, their source of usage. Mobile and stationary batteries and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of resources out there that can be, their use can be modified. Instead of talking about demand flexibility or demand management and so forth, I think it's more helpful to talk about the types of modification. So we use these terms shape, shift, shed, and shimmy. I stole it from the Race for 2030 papers in Australia, who borrowed it from the Lawrence Livermore Berkeley labs in the US. And it's about sort of defining the jobs that need to be done, or how that modification can help the system and the human work in response to those sort of signals that you need. Can't make this point strongly enough. Flexibility is not all about and only about the power system. It's not just for the power system. The biggest user of flexibility are humans. Most of the benefits accrue to people by modifying their use or reducing their connection costs, or being more resilient and reliable, or reducing their emissions. The selling a service to a network provider or Transpower or retailer or something is icing on the cake. It's a extra thing, not the only thing. And just a note to self and to you, when I talk about system, I talk about the whole thing. It's not just the transmission grid and generation, end to end, household all the way up. I actually will in a minute, because that's sort of quite about the jobs that they do with things. So why bother? Why bother with this flexibility? A lot of people, a lot of reports have been produced lately saying that they use the word flexibility or demand flexibility or something and say, yes, lots of benefits to be accrued from using this. In fact, I'm pretty sure that most of the reports and people have, even yesterday, Jen said, we can't run the power system without it in the future. Same thing with BCG in their couple of reports, other Transpower and so forth. We need this resource to run the power system. So there are some calculations of the benefits to the system of flexibility. No one, I think, has actually calculated the benefits to the humans of them being flexible. But hey, they don't matter. People can use flexibility, more resilient, reliable supply. I'm sure that, well, we've seen that in Hawke's Bay around Gabriel. Possibly the people down in Southland with solar panels and batteries may have been a bit better off than those without. There are examples of that, but also to lower their power bills by using more power when there's a surplus, and shifting their use when the cost of power is expensive. I regularly see Mike Casey skiting about how he's made some money from using his batteries and solar powers at Forest Lodge. That's the sort of thing. They can give people extra options to manage their input costs. So that's the people. Network operators can use it. Manage congestion in the moment, to manage upgrade timing. Several of the distributor members of Flexforum have said, look, we're running a system. We can't build fast enough to manage the changes in demand we're experiencing on our network. So we need an option to give us some time to do that. So there's various sort of options like that, where even just practical building fast enough. I mean, that's the case for several of the for Flexforum people. Also manage, what political, regulatory and community expectations about what I've used the word efficient, but not as expensive. I think the network costs are going up by something like 25% over the next 5 years, I think, and that's adding 10% to people's bills. If I've done my maths right. So anything that can be done to manage that helps with the economy and society. The system operator can use it to manage a secure system when supply does not equal demand, particularly given the increasingly variable conditions that will be experienced as you go to a more renewable system and more extreme weather events and so forth. And large energy purchasers can use it in the same way that households use it to manage their input costs and maybe delight the customer, hey, by offering sort of cool products that get them excited. So that's why bother. If only it were so easy to grab hold of those opportunities, because the opportunities rely on everybody working together. They rely on the system sort of coordination of action across the system and across the actors. So, people may want to say yes to Flex for a set of reasons. We've identified sort of 5 reasons that people will or could use a flexible response to a situation. It just helps we think it. So lower their electricity costs, lower their connection costs, make some money by selling the resource, reliability, and to reduce emissions. So these 5 uses were identified through series of workshops in 2022, where the members brought their experience about what people want, what people ask for from across their range. So that's where it came from. Now people can realise some of those benefits individually now. They do rely on the system doing its bit as well, including by, if they want to buy flexibility, they need to politely ask or send the right signal. And if they do, the benefits flow back to everybody. So there's individual and community-wide benefits there, but it means everybody has to work together or provide the mechanisms that are needed. I am denied about throwing this in, but I'm decided to. This is probably, the prices are not right anymore. That's why we don't see flexible propositions. That's why you can't, aside from Octopus and maybe Ecotricity, there are not many flexible product offers available to you. And even then, those are sort of quite fringe. It's because the prices are not right. The system was designed around, the pricing mechanisms and system is designed around a predictable set of conditions and environment. We're moving to a less predictable environment. There's no signals, either price or physical ones. Well, except from the physical signal of turn everything off, to motivate people to respond. So I think this is at the heart of it. The prices need to be right to motivate the flexibility and to get the information out there about when it's a good idea to use resources, how, and so forth. So after I've gone through that, so what do we actually do? So we monitor the plan, maintain and monitor it to keep the list up to date. Use the expertise of the membership to answer tricky questions and things that are contentious, like, so how would you fill the holes in the value stack? What does digitalization actually look like for the system in a coherent sort of way? So we work through those questions or those issues and provide a consensus-based view reflecting that diverse view of the membership about where they all agree, where there are areas that people don't agree, because that's just as valuable as agreement, and share that with decision makers. The group is not an advocacy group. We really don't go and knock on doors of politicians or make a song and dance about stuff. They can do their thing. We'll focus our time and effort on coming up with the practical exercises needed in working out what they need to decide to do and go, we share our advice and our view, but not really into the advocacy business. And the other thing is supporting learning by doing through knowledge sharing. So we've run 2 Flex Days now, and the most recent one in September. The members were unanimous, I think, in we're really busy. Can you help us, please, work out who's doing what or help us share what we're doing? I don't read reports. I'm not going to do this. Can you make it really easy for me? I'm not going to fill out your survey. So that sort of stuff. So as a place to collate this information and turn it into something that's digestible for people. So Tuesday, I think, we relaunched our Knowledge Hub. So this is an open invitation here for you to submit content to stick on the Knowledge Hub that's now on our website. Material that people would be interested in who are practically working in this space related to flexibility. So that's all it is. What is it? I don't need anything about braggawatts or PR stuff. And it has to be sort of robust. There are documents and materials that won't go on there because it's anyway. If your material doesn't make it, I'll let you know. You can argue it. There are a few things out there that are just not worth the time and effort. So it's meant to be a place where people can go, this is the useful curated knowledge that will help us do that. And we're also producing a sort of quarterly, I'm not sure, maybe they'll be every 4 months instead of every 3, like updates on who's doing what. To try and sort of build a picture of what's going on, but also where the gaps are, where you should be interested in doing things, where it might be time to get involved, opportunities to contribute, sort of thing, to build up and provide some, hopefully, hope that things are moving. So that's what we're trying to do. I'll also provide a self-help service because these people who are working on flexibility are often quite isolated and lonely, even in their businesses. They have to fight the good fight in their businesses and may not always get the support that they may want or need. So it's a shoulder to cry on as well. So people facing the same experiences. Okay, now that's that part. Janet, this is hopefully where I'll try and explain those jobs. Earlier this year, we sort of were thinking about questions about flexibility and how to get decision makers' attention to this, how to think about what to do. And we said, actually, does anybody know how much flexibility is in the system right now? How much has been used by network operators that is available to the system operator and so forth? And the answer was, no. There is no formal or official record of how much of this flexible resource is available and being used, which suggests how it's treated. Because if things are not measured, they're not managed, and no one cares about them, to be honest. It's not treated in the same way as power stations and all the other sorts of things. So that's a problem there in and of itself. So we worked out that there's, I think, our best guess, somewhere between, I think, 600 megawatts of flexibility and 1,200 megawatts. The range is mostly due to how much hot water is in the system. No one knows, and they sort of took a big guess. We also worked out, we sort of extrapolated some forward to 2030 with some best guesses and informed judgments, and came up with 2030, possibly 2 gigawatts of flexibility in the system. That seemed to be enough to pay attention to, enough to be useful. So we took that and then we worked out, this is a piece from a piece that we're working on now to put out shortly to go, well, okay, if you've got that much resource, how might you use it? Who might use it to best effect? And so that comes down to how quickly can a resource respond and for how long can it respond? So we'll be checking these assumptions and so forth with the membership, but the view was up to 2 gigawatts of that resource could respond, within seconds for up to 15 minutes. Out to about 4 hours. I think I'll have to check my notes about how much was available there. 600 megawatts or something. So that's in 2030. We've described those against the 4 jobs that the power system needs to operate. And I also just tipping a hat to your what you're thinking about here is the resilience and reliability. Most of those jobs relate to a secure and resilient system, how you define it. So what I haven't done, Janet, is overlay the shape, shed, shift, shimmy sort of notes here. But so unanticipated shortfalls, supply and capacity shortfalls, the unanticipated things, and this includes the system operator managing frequency. It's a tree suddenly falling on a power line and causing the things to stop. So that's job 3. So that's in the first sort of stuff. That's when you're shimmying and shedding. And your response needs to be within seconds up to sort of like 15 minutes. The next chunk of jobs are jobs 1 and 2, just managing supply and demand over time. So dispatch and anticipated shortfalls. So it's going to be a cold day tomorrow. You prepare yourself and make sure you've got resources available to respond if something happens. Or examples of network operators. So Aurora, PowerCo have anticipated responses in place in Coromandel and the Clutha, where they've got resources available to deploy if things happen if congestion occurs in those parts of the network. So they've anticipated the situation and are ready to respond. The last sort of, and that's out to about so what's that? 15 minutes out to 8 hours or thereabouts. In putting this together, we had a conversation amongst ourselves, and we need to test it around sort of the duration so the response time is the same, but the duration you might need for large weather events or emergencies. So big storms that knock things out for days on end, or earthquakes and so forth, whether that's fit into this. Maybe it's in the fuel scarcity sort of thing. So we're still working on this one. The last one was fuel scarcity. The focus was on gas or thermal fuels for the dry year issue. But yeah, there's a conversation that as we work through this. So those second and third ones are shift is your anticipated dispatch sort of thing. Okay, you can shift this to later if you know, and shaping things over time. So that's the 4 types of jobs. Commercial and industrial. Yep. That's so those are sort of jobs flexibility can do for the system and how we can do it. So we're trying to sort of put it to go, okay, if you had that resource in the system, how could you use it to best effect? And people are thinking, I know Transpower's thinking about this for their future grid blueprint. How could they run the system with X amount of flexible resources and so forth? The comment was, the more flexibility we have in the system, the lower the costs are. All right. Take your picture. Yeah, right. There you go. So, no. I'm happy to share these afterwards too. The material. So, this is just sort of, I won't probably cover this too much. I was linking everything back to the picture there, just around what do we define sort of security and resilience as. I looked at the technical definition of this that's set out in the code for security, because you're running the power system from that point of view. Although, to be honest, it probably applies to a human as well around their energy supplies. So supply is sufficient. Your assets are not unacceptably overloaded. Voltage works, and the system, frequency is system. So that's the secure state. A resilient system is one that can return to a secure state within I'll use a word, an acceptable amount of time, however you define acceptable, in response to a bunch of different events. So I think the way to look at this is flexible resources can be used to do most of those things, either for a secure system, also within your own home or business sort of stuff, more or less. Right. Try and get through this, and there'll be till our time for conversation. But I've just got 3 examples. Flexibility in the home. So this is an example from a Solar Zero report on how their customers experience in Cyclone Gabriel. So this home, the lights stayed on for, I think it was 5-6 days. It was managed by Solar Zero, saw the storm coming. They charged all the batteries to 90%. Storm happened, network fell over for various reasons. When they install the gear in the homes, they arrange the circuit so that your critical loads are attached to the solar battery circuit, so you can keep running without anything going off. And they were able to run at 40% of average usage for 5 or 6 days. And I think some of them went for a bit longer. So I think they were using an average of 350 watts a day. That's what the system could manage all day, which was enough for critical fridges, comms, and so forth. So that worked in that event. And you'll see all of in the Solar Zero research, they go, aren't we happy? It became local hubs and so forth for neighbours and etc. So at that point, that household was quite happy with their purchase. And anecdotally, following Gabriel, there was a significant increase in household purchases of solar and battery installations. Once people said, well, I don't want that to happen again. This next example is like flexibility in a community. So these are 4 schools in the East Cape. Where am I showing where they are? Done separately. So there's like 419 kilowatts between them, 850 kilowatt hours for the battery storage between them. The flexibility there is for affordability and resilience. So lower power bills was quite important to these schools, particularly as all 4 of them have swimming pools. So it meant that they could keep the water warmer and extend the swimming season, which is a sort of a good thing. So because they had reduced energy costs. So not just the lower power bills, but increased amenity from longer use of the swimming pools and other facilities there, and be able to spend money on other things at the schools. The schools can keep going for up to 10 days after an outage. And again, this was following Cyclone Gabriel and other events in the East Cape where the system's quite fragile. Lights go out quite often, and it's hard to, takes a long time to get repaired because of isolation and where things are. And the schools are like community hubs, so it provides a place for the community to come to. Interestingly, the resources there are only sort of useful to the site. Arrangements are not in place for that resource is to be used for the network. So it's a possibility for transactive sharing or sharing the power with other parts of the community, or to strengthen the network, but that's not possible yet because there's no arrangements in place to do that. So the value of the resources is they're underused at the moment. And look, slightly controversial here, but it was looking through it, flexibility in the system. So this is the 9th of August 2021, where a whole series of events, mostly human error, led to lights going out for 34,000 people in Waikato. The interesting thing for me as you work through the investigation report is each of the conditions that were experienced leading up to the event could have been managed successfully using flexible resources. So it could have been done and no one would have noticed a thing. So there were anticipated outages where I think the Stratford coal-fired stations were turned down, Huntley was off. So the owners of those had made their own arrangements to manage their spot price risks and so forth. And everybody else could have made their own arrangements knowing that power wasn't available to the system. There were unanticipated events. Weed entering the Tucano intakes meant that they dropped 200 megawatts within an hour leading up to the critical time. Wind didn't blow as much, so the wind energy dropped by 200 megawatts in the 3 hours leading up to it. Those are unanticipated events that the system and the participants in that could have responded to using flexible resources if they've had them available. Instead, what happened is the system operator was seeing what was going on. The prices were going up, and then things got more and more urgent all the time. So it's just like if you had the resource in the system to be deployed, and the system operator going, you've got that, put it in place or so forth. Instead, we had to rely on hot water, which was largely invisible. No one knew who had what or where it was available and so forth. And what happened is what happened. So yes, there was human error and poor processes, but equally, if you'd had flexibility in the system, you would have had a stronger system that probably would have avoided the event. Right, there you go. My questions. You've got this new resource, up to 2 gigawatts of it, for a period of time declining down. How would you build the system now? How would you use that resource to run the system? Design it and operate it to achieve that security resilience with 25 flex equivalent to 25% of system peak demand. That 2 gigawatts is that's what it's equivalent to in 2030. System, local community, and home. Where's the best bang for your resilience buck? Took a quote here from a Rocky Mountain Institute piece from 2021 about the resilience resource is best at the edge of the grid because it goes up. What practical steps could be tried to motivate people to say yes to flex? Because that's where most of the flexibility is and will be available from to help run a secure system and help people do stuff. And what would you do with flex so that people could immediately put money in their pocket? Or what do you know could be done? Let's not talk about benefits in the future. Show me the money now. Avoid real costs now. And because I haven't yet, I'm going to suggest don't answer that with saying time of use pricing, because it's a sham and probably regressive. And I'd like someone to show me the evidence that people responding to higher prices at peak times now saves any costs in the future. And with that, thank you. A controversial statement. Thank you. And do you have answers for me?
Okay, that was great, Greg. So, any questions or answers from the audience? Oh, we've already got some answers there.
Good morning, thank you. Yeah, question from me anyway. Looking forward to the others though. Just a bit of a history question more than anything. I presume that ripple control has been, taken off switchboards in most New Zealand households, or at least new ones now.
What's happening is the ripple system managed by the networks is slowly, well, it exists, but it's also been substituted by meter-based management of the resource through which one is it? Blue current. So it's now manageable through the meter. I don't know if that means the network control is also removed. I haven't checked that one. No. So there's two systems there. The meter-based control one is the way to go. It's more granular and reliable and so forth. So
yeah. Okay, so that still is
still there.
Yep, it's still there. And so, like you were talking about, was it the Gabriel example, or if Dunedin shut down for a week, then John and co could go, righto, you buggers are just having hot water in that suburb and ring fence it. And so that frees up a whole lot of flexibility to go to
maybe if
somewhere else.
if the network connections exist and the that sort of stuff. But that's how you could use those different resources around it. I'm quite keen to understand how household, network island, network, that sort of stuff. That'd be interesting to see how you could manage a system like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, personal experience. It seems like a simple one where I think we've got a 400 litre cylinder to use it more as a battery, and literally it's only on for an hour and a half a day, and it's off for 22, 23 hours a day. And that's flexibility, right? And sure, lots of people have got gas now, but it's still lots of folks have still got a hot water cylinder in the NZ, right? So
that's about 1,000. Half of that 2 gigawatts that I had there is about half of that is hot water.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I guess my question is to pass your question back to you. Like your membership, your membership like includes pretty much the whole stack, except for maybe there's no regulators in there, is there? But like, what are the barriers that are stopping your members clubbing up and doing the stuff?
So actually, this is all documented, but that's sort of the good question. Yeah. So the regulators and so forth are observers in the group. I'm going to move to this. I threw this in for fun. So there is activity underway. I think the sector's not really good at working across the silos. Flexibility has been seen as a niche thing. That go back to my definition of what it was. It's not just about selling stuff, but it's a niche thing. It's hard. Hot water is easy because the infrastructure is there, connectivity and so forth. The infrastructure for batteries and other sorts of things is not there. There's no money on the table to encourage people to invest in it, going back to the holes in the value stack. And at the retail end of things, there's one, they find it easier and they're more experienced with building big things. If they choose to invest in the connectivity and infrastructure you need to go into people's houses and so forth, the customer could switch away within 12 months and they've lost, someone else has eaten their lunch. So there's a whole range of reasons why the activity, it's not happening smoothly. But through our process, that list of reasons I just gave you has been identified through our work. I don't think anybody else has done that. So that's sort of, okay, these are the things you have to work through.
So other questions? Okay, got a question from Gareth.
Cheers, thanks. I think one question, maybe one response. question for the Flexforum around the person, the people. This is still fairly technical. And I was just at ECA, have done some qualitative research with varying group, and I was on the call when they were presenting it, and a lot of it was, well, yeah, we could have told you that in an hour. But one of the big issues they came up with was people don't know how to understand their bill, and they don't know how to respond from a behavior change point of view and see a difference in their bill that they see at the end of the month. So there's like a opaqueness to the behavior change versus the benefit. So to me, there's a big education piece to this, but there's also how easy can we make it so that people see the benefits straight away.
So I think there was a question in there. The audience for the group is probably not, we think about things from the point of view of the human. The audience is decision makers, chief executives, regulatory sort of people and that sort of stuff, because they're the ones who can affect change. Steps 1 to 6, I think, of the flexibility plan directly address the things that make it easier for people to make choices. I think number 1 is make it easier for people to find out what their options are. 2, 3, and 4 are something along, make sure data is available to inform the flexibility business case or the power business case that people are making. They don't have to do it themselves. Someone else could do it for them, but make sure that information is available. Because at the moment, try going and finding your list of flexibility tariffs or products that can help you be flexible. Go and try that, and you'll give up because it takes too long. So make that easier. Make sure your consumption data is available to feed through some sort of tool to make a choice. It shouldn't have taken since 2014 and some consumer data right for that to happen. It could have happened before this. So that's, yes, completely. Make it easy and routine for people is sort of a watchword for the group.
I think there's a trust piece in there too, somehow. The other bit, and maybe this is more of an answer rather than the question, but your point about scarcity. So the left-leaning government response to that was Lake Onslow. The right-leaning government's response to that is natural gas and coal. Neither of which I think are good options. My view there is that value stack needs to be available to the community straight away, and that's probably called a subsidy right now, or something like that. But that's an investment in the future state, so that at the moment it's because it's market driven. It's almost passive, and there's no real incentives there for the incumbents to do that, and the government's not leading. So it's just kind of sitting there waiting, and everybody knows what needs to be done, but no one's going to actually pay for that investment because they're not going to get that return themselves. It's a New Zealand Inc. issue. So from my point of view, this flexibility, if you like, will only come when there's an investment from the government to enable it to happen.
Motivations can come from many different places. And if government says do this, yes, or there might be other, all we can do is operate in the environment that we've got and make it seem as sensible as possible. All of the research, BCG, etc., says this resource is needed. And people have been reading those reports and going, yes, well, you have to act on it because it's not going to turn up magically. So there has to be a reason. And whatever that is, well, all we can do is, in the meantime, do the work that we can do to make sure that when the mood shifts, you can move as fast as possible.
So if you're going to have widespread adoption of flexibility, you are anticipating that the end users, the customers, the households, the people are ready and willing to engage in this. And as a social researcher, this is a really interesting question, because we know that, first of all, if you ask people if they're going to engage in something like flexibility, you cannot actually believe their answers, because when it comes to real life, other things get in the way. And also this kind of innovation involves culture shift. So it involves a change in how people think and understand the world. It involves changes in routines, and it involves changes in the material aspects of what they have. And it occurs to me that in order to get this off the ground and to get, I guess, the side of the market, which is the customer, actually working and operating, some real life examples of how people do this and how they engage would be an ideal testing ground to see how that socio-technical change occurs and what are the actual barriers or enablers in the household or in the business that are going to allow that to happen. So my question is, are you running kind of living lab type examples to test these ideas and see where the difficulties are?
That would be great. I agree with you 100%. So I think just to take a thing, people will be buying electric cars and putting solar panels on their roofs and heat pumps and so forth. They'll be doing that regardless of what the power sector thinks and does. The opportunity for people, the system, and the economy more generally is if a percent of the time those resources can be used to build a slightly smaller network. But yes, it relies on people saying yes to flex. Do we know how people do that and why that? Why? Not in New Zealand. There is work done, quite actually really good work in Australia that we can look to. I point to these list of, on this list here, like ResiFlex, Queenstown Accelerator, PowerCo work with their local flex work. All of those provide opportunities to ask the questions that why, how will people make yes to flex? What are the things that drive them? All of that sort of social research sort of thing. I have a personal growing concern that there's not, that the focus is on the technical things as opposed to the human side. I'm going to go and say the why and how people say yes to flex is an afterthought for most of these things. They're network driven activities. Oh, the retailers will sort this out because that's their job, or an aggregator will sort this out because that's what they do. It's like assume X. That's a problem. I think that we need to, I've got on my list of things to go, how do we deal with this? Join the dots, make sure that work gets done so that the assumptions that you're making are reasonably robust about how much of this resource will be available.
I got a couple of questions online. Phoebe, I'll come to you in a second. But so just one from Carsten Dorton. So he was here yesterday. Thank you for the presentation. Couple of questions. How do you see Transpower's role balancing supply and demand in the future? Will a central organization be sufficient, or are we likely to see local system operators close to distributed electricity systems? I'll let you answer that first, maybe.
I think that's a question that needs to be worked out with the parties that are involved. Look, we have a system operator that has a particular jurisdiction. We have, 27 network operators at the moment. Whether you need that many, who knows? To be honest, they don't really operate their networks in the same way as the system operator now. They don't know what's going on in the low voltage network. So we're not even at that point yet. So let them work out how to operate the network at that point, and then decide about how many you have and the balance of responsibilities between the operator of the transmission system and the network stuff. To be honest, I'd worry about the functions first, because you could spend years arguing about form and who owns what and who's in charge and not get anywhere further. So yeah, I tend not to talk about distribution system operators. We talk about functions because you end up talking for too long about who is the distribution system operator or local system operator or whatever you want.
Phoebe, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, thank you. Yes, Phoebe, Nicholas from Motu here. I'm trying to put the video on as well so I can say hi, but it doesn't seem to want to do that. But yeah, thanks, Craig, for your presentation, and thanks, OERC peeps, for a great day yesterday as well. I've got a few ideas here, so I'll try and line them up. Firstly, I think, yeah, ripple control is number one, because that's a flick of the switch thing. But ripple control is really only specifically about that issue that you presented at the end there about just having too much demand and not enough supply to fit it. But I think really this is actually wrapped up in a bigger picture, which is the climate change issue that is creating all kinds of situations that require unique responses. And I think you've correctly identified that communities is actually where the response has to be centralized. And a bunch of people have brought up some real, the critical issues there, Janet, and was talking about is that there's not enough expertise in the communities to deal with these complex issues in a crisis situation. And so I've done quite a bit of thinking about this actually, and I'd love to have a bigger conversation with you. I work on the Māori and Public Housing Renewable Energy Fund at the moment, so I've worked with a bunch of communities who've made this, who got some funding and then went through the process of deciding what to do with that funding. And what I've seen is that predominantly they choose to go, the ones who were looking at PV, they go solar only and choose not to have batteries and they are typically taking a sort of return on investment calculation approach to the decision making there. But I'm not convinced that calculation really reflects the real life value of these decisions. And because what we do see is you see a lot of like the issues in Australia at the moment, you see a lot of generation during the middle of the day that essentially goes to waste. So is it better to just double your panels and do without a battery? I think. And how do you compare the value of having resilience in a one-off crisis event to the value of having however many extra kilowatts every day? We don't have economic models to actually assess those at the moment. I don't believe. Anyway, so what I think is that we need to organise some education. We need, like you say, to have community hubs. And where they've started, they should, where there's already a community hub in place, they should start there. And there needs to be someone in that community who sort of takes on the mantle of learning about stuff. Okay, so just one other thing I want to bring in here, just reading an article yesterday about like what happened after the grid went down in Spain. And I think it's the same in every one of these situations where the internet is gone and the telephones are gone. And so what you have is that the people who are in the situation dealing with the crisis don't have the information. And the people who do have the information are far away and centralized and sitting in government offices or Transpower or whatever. And then, there's disarray and chaos. So we rely too much on the technology. So, I think the answer is we need to be thinking about putting some funding into setting up some kind of process whereby, start off with one or two, do a pilot study, one or two hubs where we develop community expertise and also make sure they have the network connections as well. So this person who's going to take the mantle in the community of understanding how the community's electricity can be flexible, also has the right connections with the EDB and the retailers and what have you. Yeah, and so my question, so that's my comment, and my question is, what do you think we can do to change this attitude towards community batteries and get more people to think about that? When they do get some funding, you know, how do we make it more attractive for them to decide to put some of that funding into a community battery?
I think learning about what that looks like is a good idea. Reflecting on your comment very briefly, I think what we're looking at is we have the opportunity and the imperative to operate our power system and our lives differently. We don't exactly know what that looks like. Let's do a bit of learning to work out how.
Okay, so
Yeah, maybe a bit of a contentious one regarding ripple control. So ripple control has been our most powerful flexibility tool that we've had in the country, operating for years and years. On a consumer basis, it requires very little interaction, and it's a really socialized benefit. The people who are pushing Flexforum or funding it are often companies who want to basically privatize the benefit from that flexibility in hot water heating. How do you ensure the consumers' interests are protected in that environment?
So, honestly, I'm conflicted about hot water management myself. The most successful, well, depending on who you ask, use of it is in Christchurch. But the effect of the signal sent to households in Christchurch led to everybody paying more to buy bigger cylinders to be able to both respond to the automated signal that came from the network to manage their transmission charges, to be honest, and also the constraints. So so how the resource gets used depends on who's using it. I think that we're probably going to end up with better use of the resource with more people using it. A lot of the benefit of hot water too has been trousered by distributors using it for reserves as well. So how it's been used hasn't been all for the necessarily efficiently up to now, or to the benefit of the households who've been providing the resource. Some contestability in it is likely to get better outcomes. And we're already seeing concerns about how the resource is used, tensions between retailers who now have the ability to use it through the metering and the distributors. So there's a coordination challenge there as well. And we can spend our time on that. Yes, it is the largest resource available at the moment. It won't be soon. Like, I'm talking in the next 5 to 10 years. Electric vehicles, space heating, all of those sorts of resources will exist, and they'll surpass the hot water resource as well. So I think it's just sitting down and going, okay, making clear-eyed decisions about what signals are sent, what those signals are for, and how the resource gets used, and being clear about it. At the moment, we're not clear. As I said during the thing, there is no official information or record of how that resource gets used, when it gets used, why. So until we do that, we can't have a productive conversation about who's using it, what for, why, and whether that's a good idea and for the benefit of humans or not.